Ich habe hier auf das Essentielle fokussiert und eine 40-minütige Rede von Cassie Jaye auf die Hälfte reduziert. Die Dame ist Autorin und Dokumentarfilmerin. Ihr bekanntestes Werk heißt Red Pill. Und sie hält hier einen sehr konstruktiv augenöffnenden Vortrag, bei dem sie zu einem therapeutisch wertvollen Gedankenexperiment einlädt. Lass dich drauf ein.
Would you say you are open to listening to anyone's story? Yeah? Well, let's put it to the test. I am going to take you on a thought experiment. So please close your eyes and think of a person or a type of person who you would never want to be in the same room with. Is it a certain politician that you dislike with a passion? Is it someone in history who did the most heinous crime you could think of? Is it someone from your past who made you feel so small? If you can't think of anyone, think of something you strongly believe, and then think of someone who believes the opposite. Now imagine you're in a room with that person. Now think about how you are feeling right now. Are you feeling yourself clench up? Is it getting harder to breathe? I actually begin to sense the blood flowing through my veins, which is a common physiological response to anxiety. It's not a good feeling, is it? And that's why we try to avoid feeling this way. We don't want to be in the same room with people like that. Them. That's a dangerous word. Them. But for the sake of this thought experiment, I'm going to make you imagine it. So keep your eyes closed. And imagine you're in a room with this person, and they're telling you their life story. What made them who they are, the best time and the worst time in their life. Maybe you didn't even ask them, they're just telling you. What a narcissist, right? Now look at yourself. What are you doing? Are you really listening? Or are you identifying the exit doors, planning your escape route? Are you storing arguments in your head for when you finally get the opportunity to respond? You're waiting for your chance to tell them off, tell them how horrible they are and how they're so wrong. If that's how you are feeling, would you say you are learning new information or you are resisting new information? You can open your eyes now. If you're resisting new information, why? What do you fear learning? If you're in that position of hearing your enemy tell their story and you're resisting everything, it will be an extremely uncomfortable experience. But if you're in that position and you let go of your defenses, you accept where you are, you decide to listen, to understand, it will no longer be suffocating. It will most certainly be enlightening what you learn. Why are you resisting that being your experience? Your greatest fear can't be confirming that they're an awful person, because you already know that. That's already part of who you are. So perhaps your greatest fear is finding out you have something in common, that you could relate to them on some crazy level. Or worse yet, you find out that you like them. Pah, that would never happen in a million years, you're thinking, right? But what if it did? Just what if it did? It's a thought experiment. Why are you so attached to your assumptions? What about your life would change if you no longer saw them as your enemy? In 2013, I decided to meet my enemies. I was a 27-year-old award-winning filmmaker and a proud feminist, and I was determined to expose the dark underbelly of the men's rights movement. For 1 year, I traveled North America, meeting the leaders and the followers of the men's rights movement, And I spent anywhere from 2 to 4, 6, sometimes up to 8 hours filming each individual person. I filmed 44 people. And there's an important rule in documentary filmmaking. As an interviewer, you do not interrupt. So I'm asking men's rights activists, MRAs, questions. And I'm getting long answers, their full life story. And it's important to note that for many of these people, they've never been interviewed before. But they've also, many of them, had never been asked, what's your story? What makes you who you are? So it's just pouring out of them. So months and months and months of this goes by. And in the moment, I didn't realize it. But now looking back, I can see that while I was conducting my interviews, I wasn't actually listening. I was hearing them speak. I knew the camera was recording. But in that moment of sitting across from my enemy, I wasn't listening. What was I doing? I was anticipating. I was waiting to hear a sentence, or even just a couple of words in succession, that proved what I wanted to believe. That I had found the misogynist, the ground zero of the war on women. A couple of moments I thought I had it. There was one men's rights activist that said, just walk outside and look around. Everything you see was built by a man. His statement felt anti-women. I felt my jaw clench. If I were with my friends, I would have delivered a sassy, "Oh, really?" as a warning. But I sat quietly, as a documentarian should. After a year of filming, I was reviewing the 100 plus hours of footage I'd gathered, replaying and transcribing it, which, believe me when I say, no one will ever listen to you more than someone who transcribes your words. So I was transcribing, which meant I was replaying the footage over and over again, getting every word meticulously. And I realized that my initial knee-jerk reactions to certain statements weren't warranted, and my being offended didn't hold up to intense scrutiny. Was that statement about men having built the skyscrapers and the bridges anti-women? What would be the gender reverse scenario? Maybe a feminist saying, just look around. Every person you see was birthed by a woman. It's a powerful statement, and it's true. Is it anti-male? I don't think so. I think it's acknowledging our unique and valued contributions to our society. But luckily, while I was filming The Red Pill, I kept a video diary, which ended up tracking my evolving views. And in looking back on those 37 video diaries that I recorded that year, there was a common theme. I would often hear an innocent and valid point that a men's rights activist would make. But in my head, I would add onto their statement a sexist or anti-woman spin, assuming that's what they wanted to say, but didn't. So here are 3 examples. A men's rights activist would say, there are over 2,000 domestic violence shelters for women in the US, and only 1 for men. Yet multiple studies show that men are just as likely to be abused by an intimate partner. I would hear them say, we don't need 2,000 shelters for women. They're lying about being abused. It's all a scam. But looking back on all the footage I gathered of men's rights activists talking about shelters, and all the blogs they've written, and all the video live streams that they've posted on YouTube, they never say that. All they say is that men are abused too and deserve care and compassion. So example number 2. Men's rights activists would say, where is justice for the man who was falsely accused of raping a woman, and because of this accusation, he loses his college scholarship and is branded with the inescapable title of rapist? I would hear, a woman being raped isn't a big deal. It's as if I didn't hear the word falsely accused accused of rape. I only heard he was accused of rape. Of course, rape is a big deal, and all the men's rights activists agreed it is a horrible thing to happen to anyone. And I eventually realized that what they're saying is they're trying to add to the gender equality discussion. Who is standing up for the good-hearted, honorable man who loses his college scholarship or his job, or worse yet, his children, because he was accused of something he absolutely did not do? Third example. A men's rights activist would say, female genital mutilation is outlawed in most countries throughout the world. Yet infant male genital mutilation, also known as circumcision, is routinely practiced and rarely questioned. I would honestly think they said female genital mutilation should be legal too. This is so far beyond what they said. Why was I doing this? I was assuming the absolute worst in them because I thought they were my enemy. Eventually, I couldn't keep denying the points that they were making. These are real issues. But in an effort to avoid agreeing with them completely, I changed from putting words in their mouth to acknowledging these issues, but insisting it's a woman's issue. So here are some examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist, MRA, would say, men are more likely to lose their child in a custody battle. I would conclude, because women are unfairly expected to be the caretaker, it's discrimination against women that women get custody more often. An MRA would say, on average, men die 5 years sooner than women. And I would conclude, for those 5 years, women have to live alone and fend for themselves in their vulnerable elderly state. An MRA would say, 99% of all war deaths are men. And I would say, women couldn't even serve in combat positions until recently, so combat deaths throughout history have been a reflection of discrimination against women. Last example. You don't like me back then. Last example. An MRA would say, men are 80% of all suicides throughout the world. And I would say, but women attempt suicide more often. Ha! Ha! It's not a contest, but I was making it into one. Every men's rights issue that they would bring up, I would have a counter of how it's actually a woman's issue. But here's what I later realized. There's nothing wrong with considering what women go through. But why couldn't I simply admit, accept, and have compassion for men's issues without jumping at the opportunity to insist that women are the real victims? So rewind back to 2013. I vividly remember reading Warren Farrell's book, The Myth of Male Power. I was only about 2 months into filming The Red Pill, and on page 70 of his book, this is what he wrote. Hold on. So this is page 70 of his book. During the Civil War, the government passed a conscription act allowing in essence for an all-male slave trade. More than 500,000 men, 623,026 men, were killed in the Civil War, the equivalent of 11 Vietnam Wars. Try to imagine 11 Vietnam Wars in a row in which only females are drafted, in which 620,000 female soldiers, your sister, your mother, your daughter, arrived home in body bags. For a second, my mind's eye saw it, and then I was enraged. How dare he ask me to feel the emotional impact of seeing 620,000 women and girls' dead bodies lined up side by side as far as the eye can see. How dare he ask me to imagine that sight? I seriously thought this. 2 months into filming. And when my inflamed rage started to simmer, I had 3 options. Either continue reading, which began to feel like a masochistic effort, no offense, or I could forget about it entirely and move on to something new, watch a reality show, read a Jezebel article, scan Pinterest. Or I could sit with my thoughts and really analyze not only what Warren is saying, but why I am feeling the way I am. And I think that's what you're asking. While making the red pill, I couldn't abandon my emotions. I had to examine them in order to complete this film with a thorough understanding of what men's rights activists are saying and what the average person is thinking. Because as a documentary filmmaker, I take it on as my responsibility to grasp a topic so fully and deeply as I can, and I have to be immersed in that world, learning from the experts who have spent decades researching and honing how they deliver this information. And then I have to go back to where my innocent mind was before I began researching this topic, because that's my audience. I have to know what they can absorb in a 2-hour film, and I have to decide what's the most important information the audience can take away when they leave that movie theater or turn off the TV. In the grand scheme of making the red pill, it didn't take me long to realize that men's issues need compassion. It took me a few months. But when I got it, I got it. These are human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men. Paternity fraud uniquely affects men. The United States Selective Service, in the case of a draft, still uniquely affects men. Workplace deaths disproportionately affect men. War deaths, overwhelmingly men. Suicide, overwhelmingly men. Sentencing disparity. Life expectancy. Child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education, homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, pregnancy entrapment, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources and compassion for male victims of domestic violence. So many issues that are heartbreaking if you are the victim or you love someone who is the victim of any of these issues. These are men's issues, and most people can't name one because we believe that men have all the power, they have all the rights. But these issues deserve to be acknowledged. They deserve care and attention and motivation for solutions. Accepting that these are human rights issues only took me a few months. But there was something far more difficult for me to face. If you start to humanize your enemy, you, in turn, may be dehumanized by your community. And that's what happened to me. One of the most difficult parts of making the red pill was screening it and publicizing it. Almost every interview I've done, I'm asked to defend myself against malicious, slanderous, libelous, defamatory statements that have been made against me, and my 4 minutes on air is stolen by these erroneous claims. It's no secret now that after making the red pill movie, I no longer call myself a feminist. But it wasn't learning about men's issues that made me part of feminism. It was actually learning about feminism that made me leave feminism. It wasn't learning about men's issues that made me part of feminism. It was actually learning about feminism that made me leave feminism. And I know that sounds harsh, especially when you wear that label as your identity. But how could I be a part of a movement that was not willing to listen, that didn't want me to listen, and doesn't want others to listen? Especially when you wear that label as your identity. But how could I be a part of a movement that was not willing to listen, that didn't want me to listen, and doesn't want others to listen? You may be thinking, well, that's not my movement. But I say that because there was a calculated smear campaign against me, and my film has been censored and pulled from multiple theaters, all because I listened and allowed other people the opportunity to listen. If I could give advice to anyone and to our society at large, we have to stop expecting to be offended. And instead, we have to start truly, openly, and sincerely listening. That will lead to a greater understanding of ourselves and others, having compassion for one another, working together towards solutions because we are all in this together. And once we do that, we can finally heal from the inside out. But it has to start with listening.
Rekapitulieren wir das auf Deutsch. Cassie Jaye antizipierte die Aussagen ihrer Gesprächspartner. Sie hatte eine vorgefertigte, feste Vorstellung und ihr kognitiver Apparat zielte konsequent darauf ab, ihre ungeprüften Prämissen zu bestätigen. Ein Vorstellungsgefüge, das man der Wahrnehmung vorausschickt, während die Intelligenz ausschließlich daran interessiert ist, bestätigende Fakten zu sammeln und unpassende Informationen zu negieren. Ein solches Vorstellungsgefüge kennzeichnet einen Hybrid aus Konfirmationsbias und Motivated Reasoning. Soziale Fähigkeiten wie Einfühlungsvermögen und Mitgefühl werden einseitig ausgerichtet. Auf dieser Basis ist ein Wahrnehmungsgeschehen kein Wahrnehmen mehr, sondern motivierte Dichtungsarbeit, die ausschließlich darauf abzielt, bereits existierende Vorstellungen und Urteile zu quittieren. Es hat was Schauprozesshaftes. Wenn man so drauf ist, will und kann man nichts anderes erfahren, als man erwartet und als man sich wünscht. Dialog geht jedenfalls anders, Recherche geht anders, Kommunikation geht anders, geistiges Wachstum geht anders und unter Freunden geht auch Freundschaft anders. Zu meiner Person, ich war von Jugend an bis 2015 links. Wenn ich als 16-Jähriger gefragt wurde, wo ich politisch stehe, gab ich dieselbe Antwort, die jeder in meinem Freundeskreis gab. Mitte links hieß es damals. Zu diesem Zeitpunkt hatte ich bereits 2 dicke Schwarten von Leon Uris zur Geschichte der Juden im Zweiten Weltkrieg gelesen. Auch Solzhenitsyns Archipel Gulag war damals Teil meiner Literatur. Zwischen 17 und 25 lebte ich 18 Monate in diversen Kibbuzim in Israel, lernte sogar 3 Monate Hebräisch und besuchte irgendwelche 5, 6 oder 7 Holocaust-Museen und Gedenkstätten. Weil mich irgendjemand rechts im Sinne eines rassistischen Faschos verortet, kann ich darin nur grenzenlose, aufs Geschmackloseste überbordende Dummheit oder ambitionierte Schweinerei vermuten. Könnte hier noch ein überzeugendes Beispiel anfügen, das belegt, dass ich grundsätzlich nicht moslemfeindlich und schon gar nicht xenophob gestrickt bin, aber ich schenke mir das unter anderem aus Zeitgründen. Mein Shift und sozusagen linker Sign-out fand statt, weil ich zum einen viele der Wirklichkeitsinterpretationen, Ansichten und Haltungen nicht mehr gutieren konnte und zum anderen, weil sich die Dummheit links zu sammeln und allzu kräftig zu verdichten begann. Es ging so weit, dass ich einige Freunde verlor, genauso wie Cassie Jaye das gerade beschrieben hat. Man wird zum Feind, weil sich andere in ihrer Identität angegriffen fühlen. Und es kommt dann in der Regel zu unhübschen Momenten. Erst vor wenigen Tagen postete ich einen Beitrag, den ein Freund verurteilenswert oder inkorrekt oder beides fand, woraufhin er sich blitzartig aus seiner schweigend verschlafenen Unsichtbarkeit herausschälte und wie ein Hund oder eine Hyäne, die hinter einem Busch lauernd darauf wartet, dass jemand einen Fehler macht und dann hervorspringt, um in die Waden zu beißen. Und natürlich öffentlich und nicht im privaten Raum einer Mailbox. Die Videoproduktion von mittlerweile 2 Stunden Content zum Thema Islam und jetzt auch eben das Thema Hirn hat mich viel Zeit und Mühe gekostet. Zu keiner einzigen dieser textintensiven 120 Minuten hatte dieser liebe Freund irgendein Statement parat. Weder Zuspruch noch konstruktive Kritik, ja nicht mal unkonstruktive Kritik. Freunde verhalten sich nicht wie Ratten und sind nicht von Hinterfotzigkeit beseelt. In diesem Sinn bin ich über die Reduktion meines Freundeskreises nicht unglücklich. Man lebt nur einmal. Es ist schon gut, wenn sich Weizen von Spreu trennt und sich dabei die Anzahl falscher Freunde reduziert. Less is more. Was wir benötigen, ist ein Transzendieren des ideologischen Lagerwahnsinns und jener Besessenheit, die dafür verantwortlich ist, dass die Leute nicht mehr miteinander reden und sich nur noch kategorisch hassen können, während die Piloten Motivated Reasoning und Konfirmationsbias im Cockpit auf Pavlovscher Basis beherzt den Gashebel durchdrücken. Mitgliedschaft in einem ideologischen Lager ist unterm Strich Gift für jedes soziale Gefüge. Der Polarisierungsfetisch, der nichts als Feindseligkeit verursacht, sollte rasch ein Ende finden. Ich denke, dass Cassie Jayes Erzählung ein augenöffnender, konstruktiver Beitrag in genau diese Richtung ist. Und ich empfehle euch, sich die 20 Minuten ein zweites Mal anzuhören und anschließend eine schweigende Viertelstunde dran zu hängen. Tut dem Gehirn gut. Ja. Man sollte sich öfter fragen, ist das jetzt gerade meine Meinung oder folge ich nur der Ansicht meiner Gruppe? Ist meine Aussage das Werk meines Gehirns oder lediglich ein Copy-Paste einer adaptierten Phrase, die ich nie auf ihre Richtigkeit, Applikabilität und Implikationen hin überprüft habe? Bin ich vorwiegend ein Pavlovscher Reizreaktionsapparat, der lediglich das Kläffen meiner Gruppe verstärkt, oder bin ich mehr?